Warning: this creepypasta is made up and not real. It also contains content that may not be suitable for younger audiences. If you get scared easily, do not watch this creepypasta. Viewer discretion is advised.
A few months ago, I went outside to check the mail. I have one of those really old mailboxes that is right outside my house. I looked through the mail. It was all bills, and flyers, and magazines. Then I noticed something else at the bottom of the mailbox. It was a videotape. Now, sometimes I find things in the mailbox like bugs, garbage, and things like that. A few years back we had found a squirrel had made a nest there, but why videotape? I picked it up and looked at it. It looked like a normal videotape. I looked at the side. There was a shiny sticker of a butterfly on it. I peeked into the mailbox, hoping to find some explanation for the videotape, but I found nothing else. I walked inside and set up my VCR, which had been collecting dust by then. I inserted the tape in and waited until it was finished rewinding. When it was finished, I pressed play on my remote. It was 10:30 at night, and I grabbed some popcorn and a soda and plopped my ass onto the couch. I was ready to watch this mysterious tape. The video started with one of those WNEG idents. I had last seen that ident when I was maybe 6 or 7. What followed was an old advert for Marineland from the 1990s. During that advert, the screen kept flashing. I couldn't make out what was flashing, because it only lasted for a quarter of a second. The Marineland ad was cut off, and it went to pitch black. I was about to rewind to see what was flashing, when a familiar thing came up. It was PBS Kids. There was a brief advert for Chuck E. Cheese's. I smiled, as I watched my childhood return to me. Suddenly, it faded to what show was coming up next. Coming up next. Dragon Tales, in PBS Kids. I'm sure most of you know the show Dragon Tales. It's better that you've at least seen 5 episodes of the show, before you understand any of this. The intro of the show started. Everything was right, except there was no sound. It cut off in the middle of the intro and cut to a picture of Max sitting on a yellow chair with the words Dragon Tales crudely written above him in red. The thing that frightened me the most was Max's facial expression. He was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. He sat there, if he was trying to smile, but he needed to cry. Almost like the expression of a man about to hang himself. The episode started. It showed an outside view of Max and Emmy's house, as it always does. The sky was a dark red, and the sun was an orange-like color. Max walked in holding his elbow. "Ow!" he exclaimed. I bumped my elbow in the table. Emmy stood at him. She had a frown in her face. "Maybe, if you'd fuck me, then your elbow wouldn't hurt so much, you stupid cunt," she replied, as canned laughter played. I was shocked at what I had just heard. She had said what I thought she had just said. More significantly, there was no credits or episode title. Then Max said, "Emmy, Mom told us to not say that word." Emmy took a deep breath. Before she could speak, Max screamed. "Don't do it, Emmy," he cried. "I don't want to live through this hellhole anymore." Do what? I wondered. What was Emmy going to do? I was starting to get scared at this point, and I knew I was not watching a normal episode of Dragon Tales. They continued their conversation. The rest was barely audible. Finally, Emmy suggested in a clear voice, "Why don't we go to Dragonland?" The dragon wallpaper was black and bright red. The dragons in the wall had gigantic smiles in their face. They held each other hand in hand and chanted, I wish, with all my heart, to fly with dragons, in a land apart." After they arrived in Dragonland, they looked for their friends. They found Hord sitting behind a rock, with a portable radio beside him. Max approached him. "Hey, Hord. Wanna play with my new truck?" he asked. Hord turned around. I could hear the radio was playing something. At first I couldn't hear what the voices were saying, because the quality was a little crappy, but as the quality improved, I began to hear what the man in the radio was saying. What I heard was, "Well, Jim, this is a terrible situation we have here. Police have confirmed the plane carrying President Bill Clinton was hijacked by a few members of Al-Qaeda. The plane crashed into the Statue of Liberty in New York City, the city where Clinton was supposed to appear. We are unsure who else was on that plane, or if there were any casualties. I don't know anything else, but all I can tell you is the Statue of Liberty is in flames and the plane was carrying President Bill Clinton." During the time the radio was playing, Hord was sitting behind the rock. He had no expression in his face. He was just sitting there still. He wasn't dead, but his face almost looked like it. I thought back to Max's expression in the chair. Once the static ended, Hord walked away. He walked expressionless and he walked in a straight line around Dragonland. The sky was blood red. Hord then gave a slick smile, and a gigantic scream erupted out of nowhere. It cut to a zoom-in of a photorealistic image of Hord in a bony-like state, lying dead, with his eyes torn out and a message carved out on his head. In Hord's blood it said "Hail Satan." It cut to black at that second. It then faded into a church. The bell rang in a distorted, deep tone. The sky was still blood red. The anchorman proclaimed, "Breaking news. President Bill Clinton is dead. He was killed this afternoon in a plane crash along with Vice President Al Gore and 55 other government officials. Also on that plane was rock and roll legend Chuck Berry and 40 other people. The plane was hijacked by 5 Al-Qaeda members, whose names have not been confirmed yet. This is a terrible, shocking day for not only the United States of America, but for the entire world. As you can see, we heard blood-curdling screams coming from this plane crash, and called the police to investigate. However, all they found was a shattered television, a broken game console, and a torn-up couch. I claim to have heard something that sounded like a knife stabbing through flesh, and a small few even claim to have heard gunshots. However, none of this has been confirmed to be true, as there is nobody here. There are no bullet shells, knives, or even any blood for that matter. Apparently there is one last piece of evidence that the officers missed in their original search. It is a pair of glasses. The only real distinguishing feature is that the glasses are unusually round. Other than that, they are just plain brown glasses, with one lens broken. All of the officers claim to remember seeing these glasses somewhere, but they can't seem to remember where. One claims that they were on a TV show once. However, he can't seem to remember what the show is called. The only thing that he can remember is that the main character wore glasses like these. All we know now is that there is apparently a serial killer in the loose, or kidnapper, and a teenager who is dead or missing. Folks, that's all the recent information we received. Tune in the next 10 minutes for further details. After that, the radio static came back. It showed paintings of the inside of the church. At that moment, I assumed this had something to do with the death of Clinton. It zoomed in on the coffin. It was photorealistic. Then Zach appeared in screen, as he shouted "Cassie, no." It cut to a third-person video. It was silent, except for random beeping noises. And by silent, all you could hear was a film projector running. It showed Cassie walking around in a white background. She just kept walking. The beeping sounds got louder. Cassie stopped. She walked over towards the screen. I could hear her breathing. Her eyes were bloodshot, her teeth were broken, and her hair was shaved off. At this point, I thought Cassie could hear me. Cassie opened her mouth. What followed was the most ear-piercing, loudest sound that I have ever heard in my life. It wasn't like a scream, but a really messed up beeping sound that was louder than any human could hear. My ears sometimes still ring from that. That is how bad it was. In fact, I'm lucky I am not deaf. Cassie continued to stare at me. I was getting scared at this moment, and I didn't want to watch anymore. I tried to shut it off. Said Cassie in the voice of a crying, choking woman. We must pray to Satan. Then it faded to black. It faded to a dragon tune. For those that don't know, the format lost to 10-minute episodes, and a song in between. I hoped that the nightmare had ended. It hadn't. The song was an organ track that was being looped. The video quality wasn't very good, so I couldn't see what was really going on. From what I could make out, there were about 500 dragons in a gigantic circle chanting Cassie, Cassie, Cassie over and over again, for about a minute. Cassie then smiles and jumps into the fire. The video quality suddenly improved. It shows Cassie's flesh burning. She looked at me and proclaimed, "You did this to me," before her skin was burned to ashes and her entire body turned to rubble. It actually showed her being burned. Suddenly, hundreds of dragons pounced on her remains. They began to scratch at each other. They were devouring each other. It showed dragons biting into each other's skulls, dragons ripping off the flesh of other dragons, and fleshless dragons crying blood. I began to wonder how this was a dragon tune. The scene changed back to Max and Emmy back at their house. "I need my truck," exclaimed Maximum. "Well, hurry up," said Emmy in an angry voice. Max then fell in the toy box he was searching. Emmy, I'm locked. Help me," Max screamed. He was crying. Like, actually real crying. Emmy screamed it stuck. You could feel the pain, as Max panicked to get out. To make a long story short, he didn't. It cut to a gigantic cage. It showed Zack and Wheezy in all fours, drinking water from a dish. They began to sing. The singing was muffled, so I couldn't understand the words. After a while, the song became more clear and the voices of Zack and Wheezy now sounded like an old man, with a gruff voice and a little girl no older than 4. The last verse went something like this. "Praise thy devil, for he is thou. Let him possess unto thou, for pain and torture are all we can see. It's better you than him and me." Then, they paused. The video cut to a surveillance camera room. There was a little girl and an old man in the room. In fact, it was the same two people who voiced Zack and Wheezy. The little girl was crying. It was actual crying. "Stand up," the man said in a gruff voice. "I said stand the fuck up so I can rape you again," the man shouted. You could actually see the man rape the little girl. You could feel her pain, as she was being forced to do something illegal. Her screams and cries echoed. Finally, the screams and cries stopped. "Stand up, you filthy piece of shit," the man yelled. "I want my mommy," the girl cried. She was screaming. Out of the blue, a loud gunshot rang out, as the man shot the poor girl. The girl continued to scream loudly. 5 shots were fired. You could hear the whispering of the old man's voice. "Oh, shit, what am I going to do with the body?" It cut to a bunch of stop-motion animation sequences of different angles of a plane crashing into the Statue of Liberty. I began to wonder how the girl's rape and murder and the terrorism act connected together. It cut to pitch black. Suddenly, a face came out from the shadows. It was a terrifying figure from one of my worst nightmares from when I was 5. It looked like Satan, his eyes were bulging out, and he had a big smile in his face. He opened his mouth and let out that ear-piercing sound I had heard earlier. I was able to stop the video now. I didn't want to see the face of that terrible demon anymore. I shut off the VCR and stayed up all night in my computer. I threw out the videotape, but after I took some photos of the episode. Before garbage day, I made sure the video was in the garbage. It wasn't. I searched the house and it was nowhere to be seen. I never have seen the tape again, And I warn you to never pick up mysterious videotapes you find.